Casey Shepard, Integrative Health Coach here, bringing you guys more information and education all the time. The more you know, the more you understand, the better and the healthier your body will be, because the deeper you can dive and the more you can thrive. I help men and women all the time learn how to optimize their bodies by digging deeper, finding out how to achieve the health, vitality, the physique, and the wellness that they've never been able to achieve before by looking deeper in the body instead of on the surface level areas. Today, I want to talk about why not everybody needs probiotics and fermentable foods. This is a $58 billion industry between fermentable foods, the supplementation, prebiotics. $58 billion a year as of 2022 people spent on this sort of supplementation and these foods for probiotics. $18 billion of that was just on the supplements alone. The unfortunate part of the supplement industry and life in general is that people will capitalize on what is popular, people believe that they need. And so there are people out there who are selling really terrible products. They're not even getting down into the intestinal tract where the body needs to utilize them because they're not encapsulated correctly, they're not stored correctly, they're buying poor quality supplements, they're not being taken right, or they're just not the right blends for people. So it's very easy for anyone to pop out a new supplement with crappy product or not having the best capsule in it that it needs to get down past the stomach into the body where it can be utilized. And so there's many different things to look at with this supplementation. Probiotics work in several different ways. We have the prebiotics, which are your fibers, polyphenols, different forms of fiber that help feed the healthy microbiome and support that growth. The fermentable foods kind of help the bacteria grow, but they also have bacteria in them. And some of the issues that people run into and why not everybody needs them is because some people alone already have a very balanced microbiome because of their diet. They're getting in a lot of fiber, polyphenols like berries and cacao and these things that help feed and keep balanced. And then they're slamming in all this fermentable foods, causing the feeding of the bacteria to be too high and overgrow. There are two different kinds of bacteria in our guts, Bacteroides and Firmicutes. They make up 90% of our healthy microbiome. And when these get too high, like the Firmicutes, or the ratio between the two are too high, people tend to over ferment in their gut. They may have issues with carbohydrate metabolism. They're storing these calories and not utilizing them correctly, and then it causes overgrowth of some of the bad bacteria, what we call opportunistic bacteria, where when those other ones get a little bit too elevated, they become negative. So we have issues on either side. If our bacteria is too low, we have compromised intestinal lining. Our healthy commensal bacteria keep the balance between the good and the bad bacteria positive, where those bad bacteria can't get too high, but they also contribute to mucosal lining in our intestinal tract, keeping that clean and thick and safe. And when they are too high, they can start to create issues within the lining of our intestinal tract, or if they're too low, we can't keep the bad bacteria out in the first line of defense, or we don't have a very good intestinal tract lining that helps keep everything safe. Contributes to a lot of the gut motility that we have, so on and so forth. So we kind of see from diet and fiber to healthy commensal bacteria. Is it too high? Is it too low? You are somebody who does not need higher based probiotics to keep your system in that place. If you already have a balanced gut microbiome, if you started eating crappy all the time, or you weren't eating enough fiber, or you didn't get enough of the polyphenols and berries and things like that, having some fermentable foods is good for the immune system and whatever, but we can get too much of it and have a lot of issues, as I said. And in terms of the supplementation side, if you're taking way too high of a dose, or if you're not taking any at all, you could be causing more issues in fermenting. This is why certain people feel bloated. If you have a supplement that has a lot of prebiotics in it and you don't need them or you have issues with some of those fibers, and I'll get into that a little bit later in this video as to why certain fibers trigger issues for people and not others, and what fibers are better for people who have some of these issues. But again, a lot of the overgrowth and overfermentation is what's causing some of these good bacteria to become a problem because you're getting too much of it. And then some of these commensal bacteria that are healthy and good in a certain range get too high and then start to create a lot of these other issues. So it can lead to a lot more bloating, inflammation. You can start to actually be feeding more of these bacteria where they start to thrive. And if you have already any other dysfunction like bad bacteria, SIBO, candida overgrowth, then it will make things worse, as I said. So the SIBO lives in the small intestine. They feed off of methane and hydrogen sulfide, and they start to create more bloating, gut motility issues, and that can be caused by some of these different probiotics and fermented foods in the system. Candida and fungal overgrowth, yeast like candida thrive on certain prebiotics and fermented foods, leading to increased symptoms and more issues. Histamine intolerance is a huge thing. Fermented foods and probiotics can create a lot of histamine. Specifically, more of the fermented foods are high in histamine, like the kimchi and the fermented sauerkraut, kombucha. And histamine intolerance is a huge issue for a lot of people because we have histamine overload. A lot of foods are high in histamine. We can have issues clearing histamine if we have any issues with liver. If you have any digestive insufficiencies with your gallbladder or your liver, you might have a hard time clearing histamine. If you have estrogen dominance, estrogen kind of flows with histamine. The higher the estrogen, the higher the histamine. So you start eating fermentable foods, it creates more histamine issues, and that can create a response. So if you're good with your probiotics and you feel great when you take them, but you don't do well with some of the probiotic foods and the fermented foods, you might just have a histamine issue or lack DIO enzyme that helps to clear histamine, which that's also produced in the liver. So again, if you have issues with liver function, you most likely have issues with excess estrogen, issues clearing histamine, and it can just create immune system inflammation, overreactions, bloating, skin rashes, congestion, dizziness, a lot of those kind of issues. So short chain fatty acid imbalances are also a big issue. Butyrate, acetate, propionate help regulate the gut function, and when they become imbalanced, they produce excess butyrate and propionate from fermentation. Certain strains of bacteria produce excess butyrate and acetate and propionate, creating higher levels of short chain fatty acids that can worsen inflammation, gut motility issues, neurological symptoms. And again, this isn't something that you guys should know what's going on or understand. These are things that I look at in the GI map test when I'm doing the DNA stool analysis, because I can tell quantifiably exactly how much overgrowth is in your system, exactly where your commensal bacteria and your healthy bacterial are. We can see if you're over fermenting by the levels of these things and some of the digestive capacity. Where is the lining of your intestinal tract at? How is the integrity of that lining? Again and again. So if you have overgrowth and fermentation issues, really the only way to actually target what you need, because you could be really high in certain strains and not in others, and it would just show us exactly what you need to do. But supporting your system with the right digestive enzymes, the right bile acids, nutrients that help regulate some of the fermentation, the right kind of fiber, and just having the targeted protocols. Certain spore-based probiotics can be better for people who have fermentation issues, or there's one called Saccharomyces boulardii that helps to kill off certain kinds of bacteria and work on the integrity of the GI tract, and I use that in some of my protocols as well. The one I like is from Nutridyne, and I sell it on my site. But certain prebiotics and fibers are beneficial for the healthy gut microbiome. Polyphenols like berries, green tea, cacao, like I mentioned, resistant starch, which would be like cooled and cooked potatoes and rice, green bananas, which nobody eats, but green banana fiber, or certain kinds of fibers. I acacia fiber, guar gum. I tend to do okay with psyllium husk with people. I always do the organic stuff. If you have over fermentation issues, I always say this wrong, but frugalolosaccharides are a prebiotic fiber, and you see these in a lot of the formulas, or inulin. These can create a lot of bloating and over fermentation for people. There's several others, but gosh, what are the other ones? I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there are just several different kinds of these things that create the issues and over fermenting in the gut. And so that's just something that you really truly want to make sure that you're watching out for. And again, my main concern here is not trying to get people to not want to utilize probiotics or fermentable foods. Again, everything just needs to be individualized, and that's what I want people to know. Don't just go out and take a probiotic because everyone thinks it's great or they have some specific marketing scheme. I have probably like 40 different probiotics that I use with people based on what I see in their GI map specifically for their gut. There are just some really like basic mid-range ones that a lot of people can do well if they already have like a decent level and just keeping it there. And I have other ones that are 100 billion that are spore-based or that might be specific to certain levels. There's a commensal bacterial called Akkermansia, which is specific to the mucosal lining of our digestive tract. If people have like extremely low levels of that, you can supplement with that alone to help with building the intestinal integrity of the gut back up. These people probably also have leaky gut as well. We would look at maybe their food sensitivity and what's continuing to trigger that as well. So anyways, hopefully this gave you just like a better overview of why not everybody needs fermentable foods, high dose probiotics, and why you shouldn't just go out and pick whatever or get the one that everyone else thinks. If people ask me for recommendations, I give them a very basic low dose one that a lot of people could do well on. When I've done this with clients, when I test them in a GI map, several of them ended up needing a very higher dose one. So the one that they were taking wasn't hurting them. They just needed one that was ended up being a lot higher. And I've had a few people who I tested who were over fermenting, and it wasn't because of the probiotics that they were taking. It was a digestive issue. So we went to fix the overgrowth of bacteria. We supported the digestive tract. We were able to add those probiotics back in at a low dose and kind of like fix their stuff there. So all my links are down below in the description. If you want to look at more of my content, follow me on all platforms. My website's there. Follow my blog post, and I do have a free ebook where I talk about all things with the gut, hormone balance, minerals, organic acids, how all of it ties together to create the most optimized internal balance that then carries over into our physique, into our skin, into our hair, and all of those other things. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact me, and stay tuned for more videos.